Welcome to Rooted and Rising, a soulful podcast hosted by Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone. Join the conversation as Dr. Cheri and Ellice explore the transformative power of holistic healing from the inside out. Together, they guide listeners through the deep work of reconnecting with their roots, uncovering the unconscious wounds that shape us, and rising into the fullness of our higher selves. So please, welcome the hosts of Rooted and Rising, Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone.
Hello, welcome to Rooted and Rising. I'm Dr. Cheri. I'm here with my co-host, Ellice Boone. We're here today to explore the question of what if that quiet pull inside of us is actually our intuition and our deep into our unconscious that's trying to guide us through the unresolved grief or loss that we experience that never got healed and leading us exactly where we need to be. In our last two episodes, we talked about ketamine therapy, psychedelic assisted therapy, and we talked about grief being kind of the all of all our dis-ease in our world. And today we're going to kind of tie those together and really tap in to that inner knowing and how to weave that through our healing path. And so welcome.
Yes, welcome, listeners. I'm so glad to have you back. Rooted and Rising has really been such a work of our hearts to come together in this way. And our goal here on the show is to explore all of the different ways that we can heal and grow as humans, and also to reconnect to the truest version of ourselves. So every week we're here, Dr. Cheri and I, to give you tools, to give you insights, past experience, client experiences, and personal experiences in the hopes that this will help you ground and find a little bit of light on your own healing path. And what's really important for us to highlight is that healing isn't about just leaving this old version of yourself behind. It's about bringing yourself into wholeness. And so hopefully some of our tips and tricks and tools can give you some insights on how to do that for yourself. So Dr. Cheri, a really fun topic. We had fun discussing this and coming up with something we wanted to share because it sort of feels like a paradox in a way. We're talking about intuition and strength and how we need both of them on this. And yet there's a lot of people, if you at first glance looking at intuition and strength, it almost seems like these words have opposite meanings. But you said a really good analogy, which I picked up on, and I want you to elaborate on that. You said, actually, intuition and strength are like dance partners, and we need them to dance together to get to our healing. So can you tell the listeners a little bit more about what that means to you?
Yes, our everyone has intuition. Our intuition is the quiet body signals I call whisperings from within, that inner compass that we all have. And then, the strength is our fortitude. It's the protective action that we can take in going where we know we need to be. And so what happens though is when we experience trauma activates the limbic system in our brain, and which is that lizard brain where we either freeze, we fight, or we flee. And so it dampens the intuition, and because we're in that hypervigilant action mode, and it's not strength because we are floundering, and it's like happening to us, like we can't paralyze ourselves. We can't not run. We cannot, freeze, and fight. And so it that really is another way of saying our strength is overactive. And so this is just trauma impacting these parts of us and these aspects of us. And once we know that, then we can begin the work to get attached back into that, connect back to that intuition, and come back to the strength that we have. And as we discuss in their episodes, we can do this a variety of ways. And I think one of the simplest ways is what you're going to do for us, what you do beautifully in our episodes, is some time of breath meditative work, and getting into the body, in which we talked about somatic healing, and then binary movement, which we talked about with EMDR. These are some of the things, connecting our thoughts, our limbic brain with our prefrontal cortex, where the strength is, the reasoning, and bridging them again. And navigating through that path, which is what we're going to talk about today, I hope.
Yeah, it almost sounds like when you're speaking, I have this idea that a lot of us and many people in the world are acting from this reactive state, right? So they're in that fight or flight, as you described. And like you said, that dampens the intuition. So to get back in touch with our intuition, we actually have to pause. And that's the
Yes.
first step. We have to pause. We have to take a breath. We have to take a moment to really listen. And we'll do that in a practice in a little bit. But this is the first step in connecting to our intuition, because the strength is valuable. We need that. We need those action steps to move forward in our healing, to use the practices, to use the tools. But if we're not tapped into what our body signals and messages are, then our mind and body are disconnected. And then we're responding from our action place, and we're not responding actually from a more heart centered place. And the mind and body not connecting means that we're going two different directions, and that's never going to feel aligned. And we're never going to get really complete healing if we're going those opposite directions from mind and body. So, yes, so good.
And what that brings me up to me is what you really hit the nail on the head about what strength really is. Strength, we in today's society, I feel like we're taught that strength is do more, and therefore, it is act, rather than be more. And sometimes taking that pause is strength. Well, many times taking the pause is strength. Less is more. And but we get it backwards in thinking we have to do. So I loved how you brought that back, especially into the heart-centered place, because when we go to the heart, which is, we already talked about too, is where the biggest part of our thinking really happens, and our intelligence exists. It's a shortcut in getting to where we need to go. And so it leads us in less is more way to getting to end goal. And it's such, without the static that occurs in pushing and grinding through something that we think that's what we need to do, rather than
Yeah.
allowing it to flow and go along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right. I feel our society, we're all about the hustle, right? We're all about the get it done. And unfortunately, that signals to our body and mind that we're bypassing our intuition, that we're checking in, with what our actual needs are. And that is rewarded in our society in many ways, in the workplace, even in our family life as a mother. Like, oh, you're meant to juggle all of these things and work and provide for the family, and have your kids in 5,000 different activities after school, and that's looked at as good, like, oh, you're achieving all of these things. And yet, what are we doing? Like, what is the cost of that internally?
Yes.
So, thing to note. I think too, in looking at this, I think that there are positives to both things, and negatives, like shadow side to each thing, right? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but I feel that there are shadow sides to only going with our intuition, only trusting that and having no action steps. So it's like, to me, it's like people kind of remain in this dreamy state of like, oh, I'm in the flow, but there's no action steps towards what their healing is or what their needs are. And on the other side, like you kind of mentioned with the strength, if they're only focused on the action steps, but they're not tuning in to themselves and what their needs are, then they kind of lose that softness, and they lose that connecting the mind and the body. Do you feel that?
That makes sense. I agree with that. I think that, one or the other is not really expressing one or the other, expressing ourselves. Intuition is intuition until it is acted upon. If you stay in that dreamy space, you're not you're not expressing your life, and so, and then if you bypass intuition, you can very much become a robot. And this is where addictive behaviors come. We give up our free will, really our free agency to act in what we know, when we fall into that robot mode, and that is a life without intuition. And so we can't, a lot of people, they'll feel the intuition and they won't act because it scares them, because our intuition sometimes it will tell us to go a different direction than um, our monkey brain tells us, or the pattern, the conditioning development tells us, or the patterns we're in. And so, practicing working with our intuition married with our strength builds confidence in understanding um, who we are and what we're about, and the creation that is calling from inside out. And that is where the joy comes. That is where love comes. That's when we can, we say, you did it in some of your prompts. Hug yourself, feel your hug. That's when we really feel the love and joy that our unique individualities offer. And so there's so much, so one or the other, it's like walking with one leg. You're trying to run a race. You're just not going to achieve the results that you want if you're not, if you think you really have two legs. And just imagine it, or to
Yeah.
prepare that's one-legged.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it really is a dance. It's a dance partner. It's a balance. Both are needed to really get to the depths of transformation and healing
Yeah.
that
Yes.
necessary for our growth and becoming a whole human, a whole version of ourselves. Um, Beautiful. I really appreciate that. Well, I think, is there anything else you have to add? I want to save the practice, I think, until after the break.
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to
Yeah,
throw
I
in?
do. I think it's important to understand that that how they marry is in the dance, is the intuition, it is that quiet whispering, and the strength gives us a power to act on that whispering. And what happens when trauma occurs, it's like a dance part. You're dancing on the floor, and some stranger comes in and takes over and pushes you apart, parts you, and takes over and disrupts your dance. And it's really, and then you can't see over the person to find your partner again. That's what trauma feels like. It's like I can't, and I've lost my step, and I lost my rhythm, and so it's really scary. It's like an avenue trying to find that. And um, that's normal when trauma happens. When that happens, when people know that that's normal for us to lose sight of our intuition, for us to feel fainted and lose strength. That's that's an information our body's giving, our mind's giving, our being's giving, that you have experienced something bigger than you, a trauma, an unresolved issue, and an unfinished loss. So everything is information, everything is wonderful. And so as we go into our great meditative exercise after the break, I would love for people to kind of keep that in mind and feel so appreciative of all information is good. We'll leave for our break right now, in fact, and we'll see you in a moment with Rooted and Rising.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Rooted and Rising. And as we shared, we get a very good treat right now from Ellice with a little exercise to get us settled into our mind and our body and tap into that inner strength of intuition.
Thank you, Cheri. Okay, wonderful listeners. As we always encourage, if you can take a moment to find a safe and private space, please do so. If you're watching this live and don't have that ability, then we hope you watch the replay later on and really do this when you can take a beat, when you can have just 3 to 5 minutes of time to yourself, uninterrupted time. So here we are. Let's drop into the space. If it feels comfortable and safe for you, I would request that you close your eyes and place one hand over your heart and the other hand over your belly. And as you sit here, just take notice of your breath as you naturally inhale and exhale without judgment, just noticing. And now I'd like to invite you into a deep inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Deep through the nose and out through the mouth. And on this next slow inhale through the nose, I want you to say in your mind, I trust my inner knowing. And on the exhale, breathe out the words, I walk in strength. And we'll do this 2 more times. Deeply inhale through the nose. I trust my inner knowing. And exhale through the mouth. I walk with strength. And last time, deeply inhale through the nose, really feeling I trust my inner knowing. And on the exhale, I walk with strength. And now, if you just take a moment to allow the breath to return to normal. And I want to invite you in this space to notice how the body feels here. Just do an overall body scan, noticing what you feel like when you are calm and as regulated as you can be in this moment. And now I'd like you to bring to mind a situation, a scenario, a decision perhaps you've been holding, maybe something you've gone back and forth on. And bring that situation into your mind or that decision. And now ask yourself a question. If this is a decision or choice you need to make, ask specifically, is this blank the right decision for me? And hold that question inside your body and just notice any subtle shifts within your body. And this could be a very subtle tightening. This could be a softening. It could feel like expansion, fluidity. It could feel like constriction. You might feel a flutter in the stomach or a ping somewhere else in the body. All of these are cues, so just take note of them. And give yourself a moment here. Just take it in without expectation. And if nothing comes in this moment, know that that is also okay. The more we practice attuning to our body, the more we can notice those subtle cues and messages our body is giving us. So close here just with a gratitude for yourself for showing up, no matter what the result is or what you learned, or even if it was very quiet, just appreciating that you were here in this space, taking a pause and listening to the body. And keep in mind, the body does know and it does feel that it was heard in some way, even if it still remains quiet. So, gratitude to yourself for showing up. And just remember that your body is always speaking to you. So, it may be quiet in this moment again, but the more you continue with practices like this to pause and just open up a space to listen, the more your body will respond. And maybe the louder those voices or those cues will get, easier to identify. So, thank you for taking a moment to check in with yourself. And I hope you can adjust and tweak this practice to fit yourself and your needs and continue developing this relationship with your inner knowing and your intuition.
Thank you, Elise. That was beautiful. Thank you. I feel like I'm melting. It's great.
Thanks for always being such a willing participant, Dr. Cheri. Well,
Yes.
I think that that's an example of what people can do, and there's so many different ways that people can tune in. But it's also a good example to see how simple it is, right? It doesn't take much, just a few
No, and
minutes.
and and it doesn't take much to take you so far because
Mhm.
I said my body's melting, but I did go to some questions I had that I have to deal just with today and tapped in, and I could actually feel a little bit. I felt this flowing, then I felt this little tightness in my throat because some of this actions I have to take are new for me in using my voice. And so I thought that was really interesting. And then just your prompt of gratitude for just showing up for it, no matter what the outcome is. And that was pretty empowering. And so that is what that is that very dance of intuition and strength. We can, a lot of times with intuition, I'm going off a tangent right here, but with intuition, we think that we should know the result, because if I know, then I know the result's going to be this. There's a complete difference. We cannot know the result because it's a future. The future is kind of change is a constant, is a consistency. That is the one constant in life. So we can't predict change. We can predict direction and how we're going to show up in a situation and know that it feels right for us, and then appreciate the creation that unfolds. And the one thing about creation is everything. So when we have a tragedy, the house burns down, that's creation. We may see destruction and loss and experience that. We need to grieve what's not there anymore. Simultaneously, new growth is happening, whether we see it or not. New opportunities happening, whether we see it or not. And we are given the fortitude within to know how to navigate that unexpected territory.
Mhm.
And so this is when we embrace this little dance that you outlined in the exercise. That's just a perfect map in navigating some of these unexpected, detours that occur in our life.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. I always love a tangent because it's coming straight from the heart. Well, wonderful. I think I had another question here on my list to ask you, which was when we get these sort of like intuitive nudges, let's say we start to listen and we start to get a sense for, oh, this is what my gut is telling me. how do we make sure that we're not moving straight into this sort of overactive, over controlling action? Because I think that that is really common for a lot of my clients and even myself to try and control the outcome so much that then we start to lose that intuitive voice again. So, do you have any tips that you can share around that?
Yes, this really is about for what comes first, first things first. So the reason I, navigate through what I call holistic integral therapy is to the goal is to create a blueprint. And the reason for the blueprint is first we need to know ourselves. And trauma distorts who we are. Trauma
Mhm.
distorts our thoughts. It distorts what is real to us. It distorts what strengths we really have or don't have. It everything feels unsafe. So we just lost all sense of what safety is, and many other things I haven't even listed. And so we are fractured, and we're fractured. The intuition and our strength can be fractured as well and disconnected. And so we first need to, this is why your exercise is really paramount. We need to remember who we are and to get to and rebuild that relationship with our intuition. And the intuition is about who we are before we have intuition about anything where we're going. And
Mhm.
so when we can recapture all these fractal parts of ourselves, we can and remember I was a happy little girl, or I enjoyed athletics and competition versus these joys that brought us that now it's like, we feel like the world is against me. I'll never be happy again. Those are the distorted thoughts. So we have to remember the other aspects of the trauma kind of dampened or robbed us from. And so doing the work to be self-aware and have insight and then self-compassion, that's the strength work.
Mhm.
Getting to really stay connected to know your intuitive self, which
Mhm.
is our higher self. And then beginning to implement these tools, like doing this exercise with you, is really beautiful and wonderful. But if us as listeners and participants today never do it again, it's not a tool then for us. And then we miss out on the advantage of something like that for us, if that is to something that works and it's meant to work. So
Mhm.
I think that is the best way I can, that's why we introduce all these different options, from simply stand outside on solid ground and feel the ground and the rootedness, to looking up at the sun and let the warm rays embrace us, to really look at the gnarly distorted beliefs of I don't matter, I'm not good enough, and staying alone and isolated about that. And so I think there's so much more to say, and a part of this is recognizing we are a community.
Mhm.
Hopefully we're a family, we're all connected, and that there are times where we need to lean on each other's strengths and each other, and share with each other and lean in. So I would like for us to explore more of that, and for what community means to you, Ellice, and how that intertwines when we get back from this sponsor. Let's just take a break now so we don't have to interrupt this, and come back. Rooted and Rising, we're here.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Hi, welcome back to Rooted and Rising. You're here with myself, Ellice Boone, and Dr. Cheri. We are just discussing a lot of different parts of intuition and strength and how they both play a role in our healing. Dr. Cheri, before the break, you had just started to go into some of the tools, and I want to make sure that we captured your recommendations for what tools people have in like sharpening that intuition and not letting the strength totally take over and be controlling. Yeah, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to, patiently recognize that it's important to acknowledge starting where you're at. It's okay if we start at a broken place, and because then we can look at some of our fears, like fear of failure, that if we take an action step or we tap into our knowing that we're wrong, or we start bypassing intuition by overthinking and then we start feeling in our body, like I talked about my throat, and we ignore that, or we even have a spiritual bypassing that prevents the pain, pretends that I'm strong and the pain could go, the pain is gone. And we can psychologically numb ourselves out. That is not what we're meant to do. That creates disease. And so, when we deal with trauma, we begin with in the smallest tools, like your exercise, micro commitments. I had one client, I thought he just said, he collapsed and just said, I'm not getting things done. I'm not functioning the day. And so we came up with him to make a list. And that was, he intuitively said, I think if I make a list, I'll be good. And so we had talked about, okay, this is a to-do list or is this a to-be list? And so we just kind of let it sit. And he came up with a list that all the things he needed to do, but he implemented the grounding pauses that are really important without even saying a word. He also body check-ins on his own, saying, I got to see what my body is. So he said, this is my list and I'm going to make it every morning. So I just have a guide. And then if I don't, I'm not going to necessarily get the whole list done. But if it's a harder day, I will just do the walking because that was on his list. I'll do the walking. And if if I don't do anything else, that's what I've done and that's good enough. And it's the self-care and recognizing, with the binary movement, the self-care, what his body, the capacity, and celebrating that celebration builds building blocks for the next step. And so that's another. The other is, I had a client, come and she had a great cat session, and then she came for the integration, and it was sitting in the waiting room. I feel like I was gonna have a panic attack. Where's this coming from? It was a beautiful, loving, experience in her journey, and then as she sat in her body and we kind of reviewed her day, she did the opposite of this other client. She did all this to-do list and ignored her self-care. And so the panic attack was a message, you're overloaded for a reason, not because anyone be overloaded when they didn't take the moment to have self-compassion. And that fit perfectly with the ketamine session, that her part of her growth is self-compassion. So that's really the kind of two ways of stories of tapping into those areas.
I love those examples, and I love the to be list. I'm going to take that
Yes.
on. Because it's so true. I mean, I'm a girl who loves a checklist, I have to say. I just love the satisfaction of checking things off my list. But I did start adding into my list. So I guess I've done this in a sense, self-care time, self-care practices. And
Yes,
then I check that off and I feel good about it. It feels like just being, I might say, carve out an hour to sit in nature and do some journaling. And just doing that, it sometimes we can have this false sort of impression that that's doing nothing. And
right.
so we don't put it to the list. But if we add it to a list and carve out that time intentionally, then we're actually feeling accomplished in our self-care. And so that's kind of flipping the script of society, which I think is really important.
Yes.
I love that. Yes, and I think for myself, I really have experienced that burnout of overdoing and putting these things on my to-do list or in my calendar to carve out intentional time. For instance, yesterday, I've had a really full week, but yesterday was like, okay, I need to go outside and spend some time grounding in nature. And that's my place where I feel so at home and grounded and coming back to myself. And that's what I did. And there was no guilt there because I had carved out that time. And I knew that between this time and this time, I wasn't going to be taking calls. I wasn't going to have my cell phone in front of me. Wasn't going to have any distractions. And that dropped me back into, what my needs are, what my body is wanting in this moment. And to me is now just a regular part of my self-care continued practice and just staying very aligned. So thanks for sharing those client stories. That's really beautiful to hear there.
And it's all about like, knowing thyself, right? And
Yeah.
so, again, if we an opportunity to have a relationship with ourselves, knowing ourselves and building a relationship with ourselves, with that self compassion, strengthens the intuition. We just hear better, and
Mhm.
then that's where time kind of folds, and we just everything that is important is achieved.
Mhm. So beautiful. Now, I notice with a lot of my clients, they start to really learn to trust their intuition. We get to a place where they feel more in tune with themselves and they start taking some action steps. But often there's a place where a lot of people sort of get stuck. And my belief is that this is where either their fear is coming into play or the self doubt, which we all have in different ways. But the self doubt's a big one because it's easy to question our intuition and kind of say, oh, kind of bypass it. Oh, that's not what I'm feeling and not trust our gut because it's something we're used to doing in society. So, yeah, I'm curious what tools you give your clients or what you use. I'm sure you experience this with clients, that stuckness as well. And that,
Mhm.
how do you help them over that hump?
So again, there's a variety of ways, but one that comes to my mind is we step back and we explore their pattern. We all as human beings we work with patterns, and the when we're clean vessels and we haven't had any trauma or anything, we just like the limbic brain, the emotional brain, the prefrontal cortex. It's very clear. But when there is interference because of life, we create these other patterns that may not work for us. And so when self-doubt comes in, we're out of this and we're off into another pattern. And so it's take some time and like look what happened before the doubt happened, and look what you anticipate, and what can you insert, the fear, what truth, because all negative cognitions are not truths, they're lies. And so what can you insert? And that is and first you have to know what you want to replace that doubt, and normalize it, obviously, because like you said, we all have it. The truth is, imposter syndrome is rampant, and we're kind of, as I said before, we leave our brain alone and we do nothing with it. It naturally navigates to the negative, and so we all have to kind of neutralize it to go to the positive. So just recognize that's normal. And now, what would you rather feel? What would you rather believe? And then let's identify what tools to use to get us there, because we know that's a lie.
Mhm. That's really good. So
But that's
identify,
work.
yeah, and identify. I really like how you said that any negative cognition is not true.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Like I think that that's an important piece to sit with. So perhaps that can strengthen our trust in our more positive intuitions, that that's more of the guiding force, that's more of our true aligned path. Whereas all these negative self-doubt, all that talk, all that chatter, we can hear it, we can give it room to speak what its concerns are, but we don't have to take that as the truth. And
Right.
that could be a really important perspective shift for people, to acknowledge that as the self-doubt, the fear, the chatter, but not the absolute truth.
And then
So,
not be scared that when you write the opposite, I can do this on paper and it looks just like a bunch of words. Don't be scared of that. Just recognize, I know it's a bunch of, it feels that way now. It looks that way now. And that's a new pattern I'm going to implement in my being. And then be patient with the course.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed for myself that intuition has been a big part of my story, um, in life in general. And I very much identify with what you said about past traumas dampening the intuition. And I would also say, coming from the upbringing I did, I was very much told what I felt, thought, believed from a very young age. And so learning to question things or trust my own intuition was not only not encouraged, it was very much discouraged. And so that voice was very, very weak in my life. And I would say the first time that that voice, I started to hear a whisper, was when I became pregnant with my daughter. And I had this feeling internally that I was meant to stay at home and have a very conscious home birth with her, that she was very healthy, that my pregnancy was healthy, and this was what I was meant to do. And this was so against the grain for anyone in my family. My husband, it was shocking to him that I would ever consider doing something so crazy. And yet I just had this knowing and this whisper, and I kept listening. So I did, my due diligence, and I went to the doctors. I had everything checked and did my research, and I continued taking one step at a time on that path that in my body just felt right for myself and for my baby. And at the end of it all, I did end up having a very beautiful home water birth that I had dreamed of. And a part of me feels that I was gifted that blessing because it was reassuring me that I can trust my intuition, that I
Love
can
it.
trust it, with such a beautiful reward as being on the other side of holding my baby in my arms and having such an incredible birth experience. Against all odds, I would say, of everyone in my circle who said, this is not right. This is not the right thing to do. This is scary. So anyway, to me, that's just a personal tidbit of trusting intuition one step at a time, checking in with yourself. And I think being pregnant, having her in my belly somehow connected me so much more deeply with that sort of mama bear instinct and that intuition, and to such a beautiful result. So that's just a little share for the listeners on ways that we can bring that in.
That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is a wonderful story. And um, I just want people to contemplate that for a minute. And why don't we just take a break? It's a perfect place to take a break. And people just contemplate on that and how that resonates with themselves. And we'll see you in a moment here with Rooted and Rising.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
Hello. Welcome back to Rooted and Rising. And before our break, Elise just shared a warm, heartwarming personal story and how she navigated intuition and strength. And I would just love, Elise, if you could, add more to that on how what the pattern behind all that. You made the decision, you had the successful home birth, but if you talk about the pattern of navigating the dance between intuition and strength, what do you see in yourself doing and in doing that?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question, because there is more to the story and the pieces involved. Because yes, I was listening and trusting my intuition, and that's what led me to do the research, go to the doctor's appointments, find the right midwives that fit, our circumstance. Have my husband educated so that he not only felt comfortable, but he was my number one supporter and advocate in the birth space. And it also led me to creating a lot of boundaries with the people around me that carried a lot of fear in their field, whether that was from their own experiences that were traumatic or difficult, or just what they felt that they knew that they needed to tell me to warn me. And I realized at some point that allowing all of that fear to come in, that wasn't my story and it wasn't what was logically something I needed to deal with or carry. I just started kind of closing those doors, not allowing that information, that input to constantly be giving me the self doubt. And one thing I did was a hypnotherapy, which I know you'd appreciate knowing your background. But yeah, I did a hypnotherapy just course and had DVDs and CDs around, positive affirmations and just like visualizing this beautiful birth and putting yourself in that space. And so those were action steps that I took to mentally prepare myself, blocking out the fear and all the information and input that wasn't necessary, and bringing in all the input and the tools that I could use during my labor to move through the sensations, to stick with my plan, and to, on the other side, bring forward this beautiful baby girl. So it definitely was a dance between the intuition, trust, and the action steps towards my goal.
I love that. That is such a beautiful map, and it's, and that is integration. You integrated new patterns. You did the investigation and the exploration, and then the creativity behind new patterns that supported that intuitive prompting and the knowing of this is how she's going to come into this world. And I just think that is key to, it just kind of puts it in a nice little bow, wraps it up in a little bow of the map that we create when we do what we know is right. So thank you for that story. And I think that is the softness and the power that story emanates is also, I want noted, because most times when we take that, these steps and create, always in that moment of creation, it is soft and power, that tuition and strength. And so if anyone, to leave with that, that is really important. Delve into the softness and the power.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for letting me share that story. That was a little spontaneous, but it felt right to share in this moment. So thanks for reflecting that. And now I think we're kind of rounding out the end of our episode. I have some journal prompts to share. and a little weekly practice. Should I dive into that, or did you have anything
Yes,
else you wanted?
that sounds wonderful.
So, for this week, we wanted to encourage you, and every week we've given a journal prompt. And just to reiterate what we've said in other episodes, we highly encourage free writing. So, setting a timer for 10 minutes and just keeping your pen on the paper. Even if you don't know what to say, just allowing the pen to move on the paper. You can write blah, blah, blah if you want to. There's no wrong thing to write. But this accesses another part of our subconscious and allows those like underlying emotions and feelings to come through, which can really get us in touch with a deeper layer of our intuition as well as ourselves. So, encouraging that. And if you'd like a prompt to get you started, this week's prompt is, what is one intuitive nudge I've been ignoring? What is one intuitive nudge I've been ignoring? And then you can elaborate, what is one small step I can take toward that? So have fun writing. And then a weekly practice, something very, very simple every person can do. Take a moment each morning, pause just for 1 minute. Set the timer for 60 seconds if that feels good. And ask yourself, what is my intuition? Or if it feels good, what is my gut asking of me today? What is my gut needing in this moment? And then take one small action step towards aligning what you're wanting and needing in your gut, in your intuition, with what your day is going to look like. So we hope those tools and this conversation was insightful and helpful to all of you. And we're so grateful to have you here. Please like and subscribe if you're on YouTube and share with friends.
And that's beautiful. I hope everyone takes advantage of these, these little exercises, and with a playful heart in mind in doing it. If you're not a journaler, get a paper napkin. If you want, get paper and do bullet points. If you don't like narratives, but you will be amazed what little, just that step, that effort, what magic can come from inside. We are marvelous, or all marvelous and wonderful, and we need to remember that and show up that way. So I hope you take advantage of it. And in the meantime, yes, please, well, come back next time and share. We want this. We want our community to grow, and
Yes.
because the heart grows with more and more of us. The heart grows, and that's what we want. And so, thank you. And in the meantime,
Until next time, stay rooted.
and keep on rising.
This has been Rooted and Rising with hosts Dr. Cheri and Ellice Boone. Through honest conversation, clinical insight, and creative reflection, Dr. Cheri and Ellice will empower you to reclaim your voice, your vitality, and your vision. This podcast is not about quick fixes. It's a return to deep knowing, gentle unraveling, and lifelong integration. Tune in each week, Wednesdays, 12 noon Eastern,